Friends, in continuation to my audio lectures, I would like to discuss today Riders to the Sea as a tragic play. Before we discuss what kind of tragedy Riders to the Sea is, it is important for us to know what is a tragedy. You would remember my classes where I discussed with you the definition of tragedy given by Aristotle. In his book Poetics, Aristotle defined tragedy as the imitation of an action that is serious and also having magnitude, complete in itself. In his opinion, tragedy aroused the emotions of pity and fear through its presentation of a reversal of fortune of persons who were noble and renowned. So, in Aristotle's opinion, if a man suffered undeservedly and his suffering aroused emotions of pity and fear, its representation on the stage in the dramatic form would be considered tragedy. In ancient Greece, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides were three most prominent writers of tragedy. In fact, the debate with regard to the origin of tragedy is very interesting. Some scholars argue that the origin of tragedy dates back to the ancient Greek times, when in Athens, the lyrical performance of epic poetry was undertaken. There are some other scholars who argue that the birth of tragedy lies in the worship of Dionysus, whose worship was undertaken with the sacrifice of goats accompanied by a song, ritual, and the wearing of masks. So, it is important for us to understand that Greeks had a very different idea of tragedy. In England, you must be knowing Gorbo Duck was the first tragedy. In fact, Shakespeare popularized it the most, writing Macbeth, Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, four of his most famous tragedies. And his tradition was later continued by many other reputed and well-known authors from England and Ireland. Coming back to Riders to the Sea, it is important for us to understand that Riders to the Sea is not only a tragedy of an individual character whose name is Moria, rather it is a tragedy of an entire community. It can be read as the tragedy of Aran Islanders. Ronald Peacock considers that the play is, and I quote, without doubt, remarkable in the way it presents unpretentious heroism, opposing sea and tempest that hang like fate over men's lives. But it has nothing whatever of the complexity of the tragic processes in human life that we find handled and mastered by the greatest writers. Robert Hellman argues, and I quote, the dominant effect of the play is one of pathos, and its import is limited. At other place, he called Riders to the Sea a melodrama, the drama of disaster, in which the characters are either victims of nature or society or self or evil men. However, we must read Riders to the Sea as an example of sublime feminine tragedy. Maurya's awareness of the danger of the sea, which she has accumulated through the loss of her husband and her sons in the past, and her understanding of the fearful connection between man and nature. However, Maurya is not the Aristotelian tragic figure because in Aristotelian tragic universe, tragedy is mostly constituted by erroneous action of the protagonist. However, Maurya's tragedy is precisely her inaction. Here, we need to understand that tragedy in Riders to the Sea is not to be associated with Michael or Bartley or with any other character, but with Maurya herself, because she considers herself to be part of a society in which women's roles are strictly limited. In fact, it is a world wherein the loss of the male in the household would be deeply catastrophic. Therefore, if you read the play carefully, you would know that Maurya does not act. Her passivity and her inaction constitutes the core of her tragedy. If you read the play carefully, and you would come to know that Bartley advises his sisters regarding handling the affairs of the home. However, immediately Maurya asks him, how would Kathleen get a good price for a pig? Now, she reveals here her own inability to act or to consider that in the absence of quote unquote the male in the family, women would be able to act. Maurya, in fact, tries to stop Bartley from selling to Connemara to sell the 2 horses at Galway Fair. But he does not listen to her. Why? Because the family needs the money desperately in order to survive. And if the horses are sold, it would resolve the financial problems of the family. And Bartley decides to go against the will of Maurya. Now, you remember I told you in my previous classes that Maurya is unable to bless, quote unquote, Bartley before leaving. He says, he is gone now, God spares us, we will not see him again, he is gone now. When the black night is falling, I will have no son left me in the world. Now, this clearly indicates her foreknowledge about the death of Bartley, which is about to happen. She knows that Bartley is going to be drowned. She decides to plead Bartley not to go. However, Bartley, if you have read the play, you would know that Bartley refuses to listen to Maurya. Now, Bartley is going to be drowned, but she also wants him to be drowned. Therein lies her tragedy. Now, I am making a very paradoxical point. How is it so that Maurya, the mother, wants that Bartley should be drowned? You see, Maurya knows that sea is her enemy. Alright? And her dilemma is not in the fact that sea will, quote unquote, take away Bartley from her. She already knows that Bartley will be drowned. Only thing she does not know is when. So she has to decide whether she can wait out the death by drowning of her last surviving youngest son, or she should act heroically to save the life of Bartley. Alright? So, it is her tragic dilemma whether to forcefully stop Bartley from going to the sea or to allow him to go and get drowned. And in fact, Moria here needs to act. And what Moria could have done, how she could have acted? Either she could have given Bartley blessings, or she would have forcibly stopped him. Of course, she could not forcibly stop him. So she would have given him blessing. And not only blessing, Bartley is not able to have the bread also. Moira says, I tried to say, God speed you, but something choked the words in my throat. Now, you must understand here, she wants to give her blessing, but cannot. She wants Bartley to live, but she does not. By her action or inaction, she does not want him to live. You remember her vision of Michael sitting upon the grey pony, all right? Bartley rides down to the sea on a red mare with a grey pony trailing behind him. Moria wills Bartley's death. The already drowned Michael in the play becomes the symbol of death atop the grey pony, and it is the grey pony that knocks Bartley off his horse and he is thrown into the sea where he drowns. All right? So you must understand here that it is Moria's inaction which does not allow her to forcibly stop Bartley from going to the sea becomes her hamartia. Her tragic flaw is that she considers herself a woman. Because she considers herself a woman, she cannot stop any male member of her family from doing what they do. Alright? So her womanhood or her femininity becomes her hamartia. Therefore, if you consider that Riders to the Sea is a tragedy, which is about Moria losing her sons to the sea, you must hold Moria's inaction responsible for her tragedy, her acceptance of her femininity, of her quote unquote servitude, all right, and her inaction, all right. Another point that you need to understand here, that often Riders to the Sea has been called the tragedy of a community. Why? Because in this play, characters are not so much individuals, rather they are representatives of the entire community. Thus, Moria is not only an individual, rather she is any island woman from the Aran Islands whose only task is to wait and weep on the death of their sons and husbands. All right. There is another thing that you need to understand. I not know whether you noticed the name Moria. I told you in one of my classes that her name bears an allusion to a Greek goddess, Moira, Moira. In Greek and Roman mythology, Moira is one of three goddesses who determined human destinies. In other words, Moira or Moria is the goddess of fate. So, you must remember here that her name is also symbolical. Moria, which alludes to Greek goddess of fate, Moira. I must tell you about Moira in a bit more detail, For long in Greek and Roman culture, fates were personified as three very old women who spin the threads of human destiny. Their names were Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. Clotho spun the thread of human fate. Lachesis dispensed it, and Atropos cut the thread. All right. In fact, the Romans identified Parse, originally personification of childbirth, with three Greek fates. All right. So here you need to understand that Moria, whose name bears an allusion to Greek goddess of human destiny, it is herself a victim of destiny or fate. So there is another possibility. In place of blaming Moria for her inaction, you can also hold fate or destiny being controlled by gods and goddesses to be responsible for Moria's tragedy. So, to conclude, I would like to tell you that Riders to the Sea is a tragedy. It's a tragedy about Moria, about other island women who themselves are responsible for the tragedies which befall on them because they refuse to act. So, on the one hand, we can consider that inaction of women on the island, their acceptance of their passive femininity, is responsible for their tragic existence. The other possibility is to consider fate as the source of the tragedy of Moria and other island women. Fate, which is impersonal, fate, which is immanent will, if I borrow the words of Hardy, fate, which is working blindly. Of course, the agent of fate in the play is cruel and indifferent sea, who has no pity for Moria, who takes away all 7 sons of Moria. All of them are drowned in the sea. All right. So Moria's tragedy is one, either an effect of her own inaction, or is the will of God or fate, or is an effect of quote unquote sea. All right. So we can say that Moria's tragedy is either a will of God, or a design of nature, or an effect of Moria's own inaction. I will end here. Thank you.